It's officially festival time again. By now, you might have met the 12 finalists vying for the top prize. Who will you be voting for? You're inside this special Sunday's edition of Jamaica Magazine. So sit back, relax, and do enjoy what we've crafted just for you. I'll see you on the flip side of this break.
Yo, this is We're committed to reducing the impact of disasters occurring in Jamaica. We're ever ready to assist you before, during, and after a disaster. But everybody have a role to play, so make we work together and follow the plan. Whether rich or poor or where you come from, hurricanes affect everyone, so be prepared. Prevention is better than cure. Be prepared. Listen to ADPEM. A message from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management.
Coming up next, we have Get the Facts.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. The occurrence of natural disasters is no longer limited to specific or seasonal calendar activities. They're happening all the time and at any time. Therefore, being prepared financially as a country is one of the major ways to mitigate the impact. The government, through the Ministry of Finance, is establishing a comprehensive, coordinated, cost-effective and timely disaster risk financing response, the National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy. To explain further on the importance is Chief Fiscal Economist in the Fiscal Policy Management Branch of the Ministry of Finance, Teron Francis. Welcome to the program, Mr. Francis.
Thank you very much, Theodore.
Let's jump right into getting some facts about this policy. Why is this important, having a policy like this?
So the National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy is the government of Jamaica's strategy to mitigate the fiscal impact of natural disasters. Now, Jamaica would have suffered significantly from losses associated with natural disasters.
Right.
And so this policy will streamline and institutionalize an approach to deal with disaster risks in terms of how we finance those risks.
So if I can jump in here, you're saying this policy, in layman's terms, essentially is, how do we pay for the damage that natural disasters cause?
That is correct.
Ah, okay. Okay, so we have suffered from not having a policy like this, have we not?
We have definitely
what
suffered.
ways?
So in the past, when we have a natural disaster, what the government usually would have done is reallocate resources that would have been planned for expenditure on things like education, capital spending for building infrastructure, etc. With this policy, what we will do is we will ensure that there are adequate resources available prior to us experiencing a natural disaster that will enable us to respond in a quick, effective and efficient manner.
That is interesting. So we don't know when it's going to happen.
No, we don't.
But when it does happen, these are the
we will be prepared for it. That's correct.
Understood. Now, in the intro to the program, we use the word insurance. That's a part of the thing.
Right.
And I'm familiar with insurance policies having coverage for certain things and coverage for other things.
Right.
Is that a part of this policy as well?
Definitely it is. So the policy promotes financial instruments for varying severity of events and frequency of events, and also types of events.
Okay.
So we have currently instruments that cover tropical cyclones, that's hurricanes.
Yes.
We have instruments that cover earthquake. We have instruments that cover excess rainfall. So the instruments have a diverse coverage of natural disasters.
I want to zoom in a little bit, the one that everybody knows and loves, hurricane.
Right.
Tell me about that instrument. How does this work?
All right. In fact, majority of the instruments currently in the government's portfolio for disaster risk financing have in it coverage for tropical cyclones, hurricanes. So we have the CRIF, coverage. That's the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility that covers tropical cyclones. We have as well a catastrophe bond that covers, again, tropical cyclones, depending on the severity of the event. We have a contingent credit facility with the IDB that also covers tropical cyclone, but not just tropical cyclone, excess rainfall and earthquake. And then in addition to that, the government would have built buffers to ensure that we can respond to hurricanes that are not so severe and happen more frequently, that will enable us to address the losses associated with such events.
So the addressing of those losses is essentially whatever it takes to recover?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So this might be an interesting question. I'm going to ask it anyway.
Right.
What's Jamaica's coverage against natural disasters now?
All right, so currently we have in excess of 700 million US in coverage.
That again?
700 million US in coverage.
I don't have any context for that number. Is that a lot? Is that a little? Based on our history?
Well, let me put a context to it.
Okay, please.
Jamaica's most devastating hurricane was Hurricane Gilbert.
Right.
That would have caused losses in excess of 1.3 billion US dollars. Now, for us to have coverage of over 700 million US dollars means that for a hurricane of the severity of a Hurricane Gilbert would have had a much more capacity to deal with the impact of that disaster compared to when it would have impacted us in 1988.
More than 2/3.
That's definitely the case.
Okay. So we're in a good place.
We are in a good place.
Where are we coming from?
Well, we're coming from a place where we had no such arrangement in place for financing disasters ex ante. So before, as I said, what would have happened is the event happens, and post the event, we are looking at how to address the losses. So we either did that by reallocating resources, or we do so through borrowing.
And we know what that resulted in for many times for our economy.
Yes, it has been devastating.
We're going to go to a break at the moment. We are talking about having fiscal policy in place to minimize the financial impact on the national budget. But the conversation is not done. It continues on the other side of this break with Chief Fiscal Economist at the Ministry of Finance, Terran Francis. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
We are in a race against time, to reverse the effects of climate change by one simple action, which has positive and enduring effects. That's right, plant a tree, leave a lasting legacy. Join the My Tree Legacy promotion by planting a tree at your alma mater and share your work with us. Every tree counts. Plant a tree today and keep climate change away.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. We are talking disaster risk financing at the national level with Chief Fiscal Economist in the Fiscal Policy Management Branch of the Ministry of Finance, Terran Francis. Sir Francis, let's jump right back into it. Now, we ended the first segment on coverage, on recovery, on where we're coming from.
Right.
And you gave us that number, which is pretty good, as you mentioned. 700 million.
In excess of
700 million US. All right. Now, where's this money coming from?
All right, so before I would have made mention of the instruments that currently are currently in the portfolio.
Yes, you need to explain those.
So we have the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility. So we have a policy with this organization that affords us coverage of over 200 million US dollars.
I'm jumping in again.
Right.
My apologies. This is an essentially an insurance agency at the national level.
This is actually a Caribbean pool insurance that we pay the policy to, and in the event of a natural disasters that would have met the parametric requirements, the parametric triggers within the policy, then it pays out depending on the losses.
Fascinating. We're getting the facts. Yes, please, go ahead.
So in addition to the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, we also have the catastrophe bond. Now, this is a bond that would have been issued in the international capital markets that allows the government of Jamaica to draw down up to 185 million US dollars in the event of a tropical cyclone that again meets the parameters of the policy.
Right.
Apart from the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility and the catastrophe bond, we also have arrangement with the Inter-American Development Bank for a contingent credit facility that allows us again to draw down up to 285 million US dollars in the event of either a hurricane, an earthquake, or should we have excess rainfall. Again, there are some requirements, so they would have had to have been declared a state of emergency and certain parametric criteria would have had to have been met. But again, affords us up to 285 million US. Now, outside of those, what we call risk transfer instruments, we also have adequate buffers that the government would have put aside. So we have a contingencies fund that is currently capitalized at about 4.9 billion Jamaican dollars.
And just to clarify, contingency fund is what we put aside.
Contingencies fund is what we put aside. Right. So from the budget, these monies would have been put aside to deal with losses associated with, as I said, any natural disaster that is within those limits.
Including drought. That has become a thing for us quite recently.
That is definitely the case, Theodore.
Now, many people, and I just want to talk about drought for a bit because many of our viewers suffer from that intensely. When we talk about hurricanes, we think about, okay, this was blown down and flooding here, but drought is no water.
Right.
So this is about getting water into places. Does it cover agriculture? So the money should be used wherever.
So wherever there are losses associated with the event, so in this case drought, the necessary analyses would be done and the funding would be made available to assist where these losses are concerned.
I have to ask, who is the funding made available to?
All right, so the funding would largely, as I said, come from the consolidated fund, and arrangement would be made with, say, the Ministry of Agriculture in order to get the required funding to those who are in need of it.
Okay. Are there any plans to further increase the coverage? We're at excess of 700 and odd million US.
Certainly. In fact, the National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy is dynamic. So it will be reviewed periodically to ensure that we have adequate funding available to respond to natural disasters. In that regard, we'll be looking at other available instruments that we could invest in to ensure that we continue to build our capacity to deal with the aftermath of a natural disaster. In fact, there is a plan to establish a national natural disaster reserve fund, which will be capitalized up to 10 billion Jamaican dollars.
How is that different from the contingency fund, or it's a part of it?
All right, so the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund is going to be different from the contingencies fund in that it will deal specifically with natural disasters. The contingencies fund is not just for natural disasters. So we are putting in place a fund that is specifically to address losses associated, and not just losses. It could be as well for reconstruction. It could be for for recovery, it could be for relief. Once there are losses associated with a natural disaster of a particular magnitude, because the proposal is that the resources in the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund should be accessed only if the event would have caused losses up to 1.5% of Jamaica's GDP.
Understood. We're almost out of time. I just want to fit this in. There have been a series of town hall meetings going out, and we're getting the facts here, where people come there to get the facts. What's been the response?
It has been good. We have had 4 public consultation sessions across Jamaica. We were in St. James, we were in Clarendon, we had 2 in Kingston and St. Andrew, and the support has been very good.
Okay, so people are getting the information.
But not only do we have the public consultation sessions, information is available on the website of the Ministry of Finance. Information is available on the social media pages of the Ministry of Finance. And so the information is there. The public consultation is not just to inform, though. It is also to get feedback and to promote and encourage involvement in the policy development process.
Understood. Sir Francis, thank you so much for having this interview with us. And in the last 5 seconds of this interview, you can have your own town hall meeting with all our guests who are watching. Anything you'd like to leave with them?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, the National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy is very important to every citizen. It will enable the government of Jamaica to be able to respond quickly, effectively, and efficiently in the event that we experience a national disaster, a national natural disaster. The information on the National Natural Disaster Policy is available. The policy document itself is available on the website of the Ministry of Finance. Please visit the website. Please provide your feedback, and you can go to the website at mof.gov.jm. Thank you.
All right. This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Chief Fiscal Economist in the Fiscal Policy Management Branch of the Ministry of Finance, Teron Francis. We want to thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take good care.
The government recognizes the impact of urban decay and blight on the socio-economic fabric of the society and, of course, on our built environment and the associated ills that threaten sustainable development in many communities island-wide. Community renewal interventions provide a platform for the coordination and enhancement of the delivery of public services to volatile and vulnerable communities. Consequently, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation has developed an urban renewal and development program as part of its mandate to strategically coordinate and implement urban renewal projects for the sustainable transformation of communities and towns across Jamaica. Regarding the foregoing, the Ministry will be working in tandem with members of Parliament as we progressively work to transform urban spaces. Therefore, I wish to advise the House that $4 million will be made available to all constituencies for the implementation of specific projects under Phase 1 of this urban renewal development program. The projects to be undertaken must focus on infrastructure, and these projects will be zinc fence removal and replacement with approved materials. We are changing the face of our communities to remove unsightly fencing, park upgrading and creation of small, what is called pocket parks, installation, replacement of street signs. The street signs must be with the approval of the municipal authority. And I know, Madam Speaker, it is now fashionable to put up signs at the entrances of communities, but this project is not designed to do that. This project is designed for street signs. It is for urban renewal, for communities where the street signs have been torn down or they have been worn out over time, to replace them. So, Madam Speaker, it's a very specific mandate for urban renewal. And of course, Madam Speaker, the paving of sidewalks and pathways. In some communities, this is absolutely important. Madam Speaker, the ministry is working to develop a specific program which will be in phase 2 of this general urban renewal, which will focus on constituencies that have extensive urban areas. So in this first phase, all constituencies will benefit because all constituencies have some element of urban areas in them.
The forecast is for warmer than normal temperatures, but have you ever wondered what could be the cause? We will have the details next.
The climate crisis is evident. It is the reality of our time, and the challenges will no doubt reflect in our present challenges and indeed in our near future.
The forecast for the Pacific is expected to be warmer than normal sea surface temperatures throughout this end of the year, but also increase in the size or extent of the warming.
After a 3-year run, La Nina, the cooling weather phenomenon, is ending, and scientists around the world are predicting the onset and development of its hotter counterpart, El Niño, during the summer.
El Niño is strengthening, is expected to continue right through the hurricane season.
During normal conditions in the Pacific Ocean, trade winds blow west along the equator, taking warm water from South America towards Asia. To replace that warm water, cold water rises from the depths in a process called upwelling. El Niño and La Nina are opposing climate patterns that break these normal conditions, and both can have global impacts on weather.
For example, in the Caribbean here, we have strong wind shear activities, and those wind shear activities suppress tropical storm development. So the wind is going this way, then you have another wind going that way. You don't have the chance for the development of the systems. So you have shearing, and those limit the development of tropical cyclones across the Atlantic during El Niño periods. But on the other hand, we have above normal high ocean temperatures or sea surface temperatures at the surface and also some depth below the water. And that heating of the water provides the energy that the storms need to develop. So you're going to be having those competing systems during the season.
The swing from one to the other typically happens every 3 to 7 years on average. But while it is rare for El Niño events to last longer than a year or so, it is common for La Nina to last for 2 years or more. These two climate patterns tend to develop during the spring, reaching their peak intensity during late autumn or winter, that's November to February, and then weaken during the spring or early summer from March to June.
So with the onset of El Niño, you normally have less rain days. So the amount of rainfall, in fact, will lessen. However, the days that we do have rainfall, whether by a trough or a tropical wave or a tropical storm or hurricane, on those days you're going to have stronger or rainfall that is greater in intensity and also longer duration.
According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, scientists can often predict the onset of El Niño and La Niña several months to a year in advance. This is done using modern climate models and observation data from the Tropical Pacific Observing System. These include the use of sensors on satellites, ocean buoys, and radiosondes, which constantly monitor changing conditions in the ocean and atmosphere. Since El Niño and La Niña are naturally occurring climate patterns, their intensity, duration, and onset cannot be influenced. However, the implementation of climate change mitigation measures could be used to lessen these impacts. And as it relates to Jamaica and what we need to know going into the peak of the hurricane season, which will be impacted by the El Niño climate pattern.
Even though you have El Niño, the warming, those two factors will allow for a near normal hurricane season. So that is what we're expecting in terms of the effect of El Niño, and in addition, the warm sea surface temperatures. So they will be competing, and as we go forward, it is whichever one is dominant that will determine the number of systems that we have for the hurricane season.
So, how do government and individuals prepare for the season?
In terms of preparation and government, let's start with the Met Service. So the Met Service is fully staffed and is able to provide the hurricane warnings and bulletins that is required during the passage of a hurricane season. We also have trained meteorologists. We also partner with the ODPEM, the Ministry of Local Government, and the National Work Agencies, members of Parliament. All these entities come together to clean the drains, to provide shelter in terms of during the passage of a hurricane, and therefore a number of entities come into play and provide the support that is required during a hurricane season. So as an individual, my message is always be prepared during the hurricane season.
As I think about the progression of Jamaica's democracy and the fact that it's 79 years ago, 1944, Jamaica was one of the first states in the world to grant its citizens universal suffrage, the right to vote. Women without any limitations on payment of tax, on ownership of property, on marital status. All citizens, once they were 21 and older, were given granted the right to vote. And this is something of which I think Jamaicans should be just deeply proud of, because it shows the outsized and visionary approach to democracy that we have always had.
And just like that, we are signing out for today. But not to worry, you can rewatch this offering or other content like this by visiting our website, jis.gov.jm. Do join us again tomorrow, same time on this same station, for another informative, educational and entertaining package of Jamaica Magazine. Until next time, I'm Adrian Atkinson, thanking you for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.